We've now seen some of our transnational criminal organizations. They now have adjusted to the area of least resistance, which is trying to enter the United States along the Canadian border. We actually saw more individuals who were on the terrorist watch list here in the United States that were apprehended trying to come across the northern border than the southern border. For any news organization to say that the statistics don't bear out the argument that's being made in this case, I think is wrong. It is troubling. I think law enforcement needs to do everything that they can. The statistics bear out that we are seeing an increase in narcotic seizures along the northern border. I think that is dangerous for both countries.
Journalism and commentary 1 year anniversary.
I don't believe journalism being funded by the government is the solution.
You have to rebuild the foundation.
You have to retell the stories.
Market conservative
Other news that actually matters.
I hence wanted to ask. I think they should answer their questions, especially if they're politically charged with.
Hi, it's Elie Cantin-Nantel coming to you from Washington, D.C. And I just spoke with Mississippi Republican Congressman Michael Guest, who is the chairman of the Subcommittee on Border Security and Enforcement. We talked about the Canada-U.S. border and the issues with that border. And oh boy, there is a lot that I would argue the legacy media in Canada is not telling us. And be sure to watch until the end, because I also asked them about the Elbows Up movement. So without further ado, let's get to it. Here is our interview. Congressman, thank you so much for sitting down.
Thank you for having me.
So you're a congressman from Mississippi, and you're the chairman of the Subcommittee on Border Security and Enforcement. What put the Canada-U.S. border, which is the northern U.S. border, what first put it on your mind as a legislator?
You know, being on the committee, and I've had the opportunity to serve on the Homeland Security Committee since being elected to Congress, so now in my eighth year, fourth term, have seen the events that have transpired at both the northern and southern border. Of course, during the Biden-Harris administration, we saw the surge across the southern border. And so the efforts of our committee, the efforts of Congress, we were really focused on doing what we could to secure the southern border, the border between the U.S. And Mexico. When Trump was sworn into office, when he put in place policies such as Remain in Mexico, as we were able to surge resources to the southern border, what we have seen is the numbers along the southern border have dropped dramatically. And since those numbers have dropped dramatically, and since we have really increased the pressure on the southern border, we've now seen some of our transnational criminal organizations. They now have adjusted to the area of least resistance, which is trying to enter the United States along the Canadian border. And so Congress needs to take a whole approach to border security, northern border, southern border, and maritime security. And so that's why we begin to kind of now pivot. Since we've done a good job of securing the southern border, we're now beginning to pivot and take a look at our maritime border and our northern border to see what we need to do legislatively, what we need to do funding to make sure that all our borders are secure.
I was watching a hearing that you did on June 30th, where you were talking about the northern border and the issues on the northern border. And you talked about people on terrorist watch lists entering the United States from Canada.
Over the last 5 fiscal years, CBP has also encountered over 1,500 individuals on the terrorist screening data set. These individuals have attempted to cross the northern border at or between ports of entry.
Can you tell me a bit about that and how many people are coming in or have tried to come in to the U.S. from Canada that are on lists of concern?
Yeah, and so if you look back, border statistics, 22, 23, 24, we actually saw more individuals who were on the terrorist watch list here in the United States that were apprehended trying to come across the northern border than the southern border. That has changed in 2025. Part of the reason the change has occurred is we have expanded that database to now include transnational criminal organizations, so members of drug cartels who are coming across the southern border. And so we've seen those numbers now shift back. But for a number of years, we were seeing more individuals come across the northern border. Again, the northern border, it is the border between the U.S. and Canada is some 4,000 miles. It is the largest land border shared between two countries of anywhere in the world, and it is largely unsecured. There are not fences, there are not physical barriers there, and so criminal organizations, those individuals who were seeking to enter the country, they are aware of that, and they are at times taking advantage. Now, the numbers are still small, and so I don't have the exact numbers, but I can provide you the numbers of individuals that were on the terrorist watch list who were coming across the northern border. Again, those numbers were small, but any number is troubling.
What's driving this increase? Because we've seen an increase in illegal crossings from the northern border. Is this a policy failure on the part of Canada? Is it because criminals see an opportunity? Is it because of crime, human trafficking? What do you think is the overall cause of this increase from the northern border?
You know, I think it is the opportunity of transnational criminal organizations. They are always looking for the area of least resistance to be able to be involved in drug smuggling, human smuggling, those types of activities, which are very profitable to these criminal organizations. Again, when the southern border was unsecure, when we saw the surge during the 4 years of the Biden-Harris administration, much of their efforts were directed toward human trafficking and narcotics trafficking along the southern border. It was much closer, much easier route for them, and because there was so much law enforcement presence dealing with the apprehension, the processing, the releasing of individuals into the interior, it made it very easy for the southern border to be used by these organizations. As we have secured the southern border, now these organizations see the northern border as being less secure. Again, we talked a minute ago about the size of the border, much larger territory, that it is unsecured as far as not having fences, not having physical barriers to keep people out. And so I think it has been just the fact that they see this as there is less risk and again, high reward. And so they have moved their operations, some have, to the northern border to take advantage of the fact that there is less security along the U.S.-Canadian border than there is along the southern border with Mexico.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this interview. I surely enjoy coming to Washington, D.C. to bring you the other side of the story, but it comes at a cost. You see, I refuse to take any money from the government or from political parties, meaning that these trips are entirely self-funded, and it costs around $2,500 per trip we do to the United States. So if you want to see me come here more often, consider making a donation below. So in 2025, the New York Post, they reported that there were Canadian human smugglers that were advertising their services on platforms like TikTok. I actually saw some of these myself, and they're like, we'll get you from Ontario or Quebec to New York and give us, a huge amount of money. And what was happening is, in many cases, you had Indian nationals that were coming into Canada legally, and then they were crossing into the United States illegally. And a year later, so 2026, the Investigative Journalism Bureau, they published an investigation exposing alleged smugglers that were coordinating illegal crossings through Quebec into the United States. As this issue of human smugglers who are, again, openly advertising their services in Canada, is that something that's been on your radar, and is that something you're concerned about?
It is, and it's not unique to Canada. We also saw that in Mexico. We would see many of these criminal organizations using social media as advertising that they would be able, for a cost, to be able to bring individuals into the United States. We saw a surge of human trafficking from many of these criminal organizations. Again, organizations which were at one time focused almost exclusively on narcotics trafficking, now have diversified, if you will, and they've moved into human smuggling. And so it is troubling. I think law enforcement needs to do everything that they can to take down these type of organizations, that we need to prevent their ability to advertise these types of services on social media. Again, but it's not something that is unique to Canada. It is something that we have seen on both the northern and southern borders as having these organizations who are advertising for their services, who are seeking to turn a profit by bringing people illegally into the United States.
So I want to talk about drug smuggling, narcotics coming from Canada. It's been an issue, but there's been some debate about it. And in Canada, we've had our political class and our media downplay the issue. I want to read you a quote from a CBC article. The CBC is Canada's public broadcaster. It's kind of like our version of NPR or PBS, and it gets money from the government. And in my opinion, it's quite a liberal outlet. It says, U.S. claims about higher drug trafficking from Canada don't match the data. What are your thoughts on that categorization of the issue? And what do you think the Mark Carney government should be doing to address the concerns? Is Canada doing enough?
You know, one, I think the statistics bear out that we are seeing an increase in narcotic seizures along the northern border. And so for any news organization to say that the statistics don't bear out the argument that's being made, in this case, I think is wrong. And again, we can point to and we can show people on both sides of the border the statistics that show that there have been an increase in narcotic seizures along the southern border. With those increases, then it would, I think it's plain to see that we're seeing, again, narcotics smugglers, because of the pressure applied to the southern borders, trying to find other routes, maritime routes and Canada, to bring drugs into the United States. Your question is, has Canada done enough? We're starting to see Canada do more. We know that Canada appointed a drug czar, to a fentanyl czar, to work with law enforcement, local federal law enforcement in Canada, also to work with their counterparts in the United States. Canada, I think last year announced a $1.3 billion investment to add additional resources to, Canada's southern border, the U.S.'s northern border. I know that as we have secured the southern border, we've been able to redeploy resources to the northern border. Congress in the United States has appropriated large sums of dollars for investment in technology. Some of that technology will be deployed along the northern border. And so, this is something that where both governments are going to need to work together. We're going to need to set aside any political differences we may have, any economic differences we may have, and we're going to have to concentrate on those things that have allowed us to keep that border unsecured for such a long period of time. So I think it is wrong to downplay what we're seeing on the northern border, because again, I think statistics bear out that we've seen an increase in human trafficking, an increase in narcotics trafficking, and instead we need to focus on ways in which both countries can work together to secure the border for the good of Americans and Canadians.
So the initial reason why Trump imposed tariffs on Canada, he says, was because of the drug problem. And in response to that, Canada did take some new measures, including appointing a fentanyl czar. But at the same time, you had other politicians in Canada, like where I live in Ontario, they removed all of the U.S. alcohol from the shelves. To this day, where I live, I cannot buy a California wine or some hard alcohol from the U.S., and many Canadians began boycotting the U.S. and stopped taking vacations there, etc. What are your thoughts on that reaction from Canadians?
I think it's very short-sighted. We have a long historical relationship, the U.S. and Canada. Again, a 4,000-plus mile border. We are involved in security agreements with one another, NATO, NORAD, the Five Eyes. The U.S. is Canada's greatest trading partner. Canada is the U.S. second greatest trading partner, so there are economic ties which bind us together, cultural ties which bind us together, historical ties. And so, I think what any move by either the Canadian government to pull away from the U.S. or the American government to pull away from Canada, I think those are very short-sighted views. Both countries have been able to prosper working together. Again, the fact that we are neighbors and that we are each other's first or second largest trading partners, those are things which we need to continue to build upon. I do know that there were issues with tariffs, issues with other type of trade issues since President Trump has come in that have angered people in Canada. But I think it's short-sighted to begin boycotting American products and to say we want to turn our back on America and turn our attention to somewhere like Europe to try to strengthen that relationship while also straining the relationship with America.
I guess my last question, staying on this topic, you're right, there are a lot of Canadians who are very upset about everything that's happened. As a congressman, a Republican congressman, I will add, do you have a message just for Canadians?
There is a great, long-standing historical relationship between our two nations. Each nation prospers when the other is strong. We work together for the good of both our people. And so there may be political differences at times. We see at times based on the people who were in office, whether or not they shared the same views politically in Canada and the U.S. Sometimes that relationship is closer than others. But we cannot allow the things that we disagree with to separate the great partnership that we have created. We are stronger together. We must focus on the things that bind us together, not the things that tend to pull us apart. And look, I think much of that is driven by social media, the 24-hour news cycle. I believe that there are foreign adversaries who would like to drive a wedge between the U.S.-Canadian relationship. And again, I think that is dangerous for both countries. We are stronger when we are working together. And so I hope that the people in America and Canada will see that. I know many of my colleagues who represent districts along our northern border, your southern border, talk about the economic impact, having that free trade, having the ability for people to be able to come and go as freely as possible. And those are things which we should cherish, and those are things which we should strive to preserve. And so I hope the fact that we may have political differences at times don't destroy this long-lasting relationship between our two countries.
Well, Congressman, thank you so much. These were all my questions.
Look, thank you again. The only thing I will say is it was great to see the Americans beat the Canadians for the gold medal. I know that probably will not be popular, but look, that was exciting to see the continued competition in the Olympic field. But look, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for continuing to call attention to this important relationship and to be able to have a conservative voice out there talking about what's happening between our two countries.
Well, thank you, and we will beat you next time. Count on it. And this sums up our interview with the Congressman. I want to know what you think, so put your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure you like the video, share it, subscribe. And I have one little favor left to ask you. These trips are very expensive. Every travel trip that we do is around $2,500. We take zero money from the government, unlike the CBC and other legacy media. So if you want to chip in, there's a link below that allows us to do more trips like this and break the iron wall of information that there is between Canada and the U.S. and what is actually going on with our two countries. Until next time, God bless.